My name is Dan Jones. I'm a law enforcement ranger with the National Park Service. I've been at Mount Rainier for about 6 months now. Before that, Rocky Mountain National Park, and before that, Denali National Park in Alaska. I've heard a lot of people say, you know, our job's distilled down into three things. We protect the people from the park from the people, and the people from the people. Which basically means we're here to protect the resource. We're in a national park. And when we're protecting the people from the park, we're talking about like any incidents. So that's your search and rescue. That's, you know, a bear attack or something like that. Just the people from the resource. And then third is the people from the people. That's kind of your traditional cop thing, people getting in fights, whatever. So Mount Rainier is one of the snowiest places on Earth. Like, we've had record snowfall here. The weather is incredibly temperamental. And to operate in those environments, I mean, we're not getting called out on the best days. You know, these incidents happen in some of the worst conditions. So we have to be able to do our jobs in those conditions. You know, in winter, if we're doing just a minor search and rescue, a medical call, what would be just really simple in the front country or in an urban setting is like vastly more complex here, because we're now dealing with hypothermia, where if the patient's out in those extreme conditions for too long, they're going to go into a hypothermic state. And you know, you've got cold, the wind, the darkness, just things flying around. It makes it a lot more complex operating in this kind of remote environment. We're on a 14,000 foot volcanic mountain here with a lot of extreme weather conditions. So we don't operate under just standard search and rescue procedures. We're dealing in really technical, extreme conditions. So we have really specialized equipment that we use here, particularly the climbing rangers. When we're talking about high mountain operations, a lot of times that's going to involve aviation, helicopters, operations such as short haul, where you've got a ranger actually dangling from the end of a rope on a helicopter to access kind of extreme environments where it's really steep technical terrain. In the winter, we'll have skeds, and it kind of operates as a sled, and we'll kind of sled them out on snow. In the summer, we'll use something called like a Russ Anderson wheel, which is this big, massive wheelbarrow wheel, and we'll kind of wheel them out of the backcountry. But it's pretty physically demanding to extract people from the backcountry, just because it's really pretty rough terrain. A lot of times these incidents are not happening on blue sky, you know, windless days. It's in really horrible conditions. So there's a lot of complications with that. One, our go-to resource, like a helicopter extraction, may not be possible. If the cloud level's low, if it's really windy, accessing the patient's one. Knowing where the patient's location is at. A lot of times, you know, with technology, it's great because we've got GPS now and people can give us an exact data point, but sometimes it's by word of mouth, a third party saying, hey, there's someone calling for help up on the mountain, and I have no idea where they're at or a description. That can be really difficult. We'll build big and then scale back. So we'll call for all the resources that we think we need, and then if we don't need them, we can kind of cut them out. But that's kind of our approach, and that's the purpose of the ICS system, is so we can bring in outside resources and we'll all kind of function on the same page. We'll kind of break it up into, I guess, three categories. One we'll call front country, which is just kind of your roadside typical visitor, and they'll have some kind of medical emergency, more likely medical than a trauma. Wilderness emergencies, more remote, harder to access the patient. We're talking about hours. It's not just driving up with the ambulance. We'll have to send out a hasty team, and those get more complicated. Then we've got high mountain rescues, which is when we're looking at maybe 10,000 feet plus, where it's really hard to access where the patient's at. And it's just infinitely more complex. It might be a minor medical emergency that could easily be treated in the front country, but because of where they're at, you know, you're looking at hours, maybe days before they get any kind of definitive care. I love helping people, and I get to do that in like all three of the different mandates that I have: the law enforcement, the search and rescue, and the EMS. You know, you're constantly helping people. You know, we're always dealing with people's worst days, so it's a great feeling to help someone out, or you know, ultimately save someone's life. I mean, there's no bigger rush than that, for sure.